Welcome back to the Taylosive Movie Reviews Podcast. I'm joined with my wonderfully esteemed host and co-host, Mr. Model Y Mike. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you, Nick?
I am doing really well. This is a marathon of podcasting day, but I'm surviving. We're here on a remote location in the deep down deserts of, where do they record Star Wars?
Tasmania?
Anyway,
I thought it was
Tasmania?
Death
I
Valley.
was thinking that, but that doesn't sound right either.
I was thinking Death Valley, California. Not too far from LA.
It was somewhere in Africa. Anyway,
okay.
I am somewhere else, and today we're going to be talking about something that's not Star Wars. Mike, what movie are we reviewing today?
Well, it is the final movie in the, I guess not trilogy.
Not the final.
Series.
I wouldn't say final.
You
we never
wouldn't
know.
say final. I mean, there is a lot of shorts that accompany this movie, but is the one and the only Toy Story 4 that I just got to see 2 days ago for the first time. And man,
Nice.
what a ride.
All right, so before we get any further, because I know we haven't done this before, and I need to do a better job about making sure everyone knows spoiler territory. If you clicked on a video titled a complete review of Toy Story 4, guess what? There are going to be a few spoilers in this video / podcast. So watch the movie before you watch this video, because it's worth it. It's a good one. Mike, we need to start out how we always start out these shows. Rate Toy Story 4, 1 out of 8.
Ooh.
Between 1 and 8.
I didn't even think about this before the podcast. I would have to say, I think it's a 5 in my book.
Okay.
I think
5.
it was good, but it, again, didn't really capture the magic of 1 that I thought. And it didn't, of course, it's basically trying to contend with 3 other movies in the lineup that are very similar, being Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. And it's kind of tough to top those when there's 1, nostalgia, 2, history, and 3, just like how the characters are portrayed in this and how they're juggling so many different characters. And I felt like some of them got their dues and some of them didn't. Especially near the end where it's like, oh yeah, this character's here. Hi! And then that's it. I thought, okay, well, maybe just a little bit more time in the film, or at least a little bit less time bumbling around and a little bit more time exploring different characters, assuming that this could be the last time we see them if they don't go for a Toy Story 5. But what about you, Nick?
I'm sure someone in Disney already has a storyboard of that ready to go. I would have to say 5 out of 8 as well for the story. But cinematography and visuals, which I know we typically don't split these out, but I think Toy Story 4 is a perfect time to make that exception. For visuals, this gets 7.5 out of 8. This is probably the most beautiful animated movie I've ever seen. And it's already, I think it came out in 2019?
Yes.
So it's already almost 2 years old at this point, and it's still the best animated movie I've ever seen.
Wow.
Every time I watch this, the attention to detail, cinematography, lighting. As an example, Pixar had to make an algorithm that made spider webs like real spiders. And so inside of the antique store, they had to spin spider webs, put dust particulates in the air, and make that beautiful, beautiful golden hour sunlight hit every little detail of every beautiful, beautiful movie. So from a lighting perspective and a cinematography perspective, it's 7.5 out of 8. From an overall story, it's not the best story, but it's still a good story. I think I was walking into Toy Story 4 in the theater. I saw it in theaters with my sister. I should probably back up a little bit further. Toy Story 3 ended perfectly, right? Like, it felt like the entire Toy Story franchise was tied up in a nice little bow, and it was like, we're done. We sent off Andy. We've completed our mission. On to Bonnie. Like, it was perfect ending. And then I remember distinctly where I was. I was scrolling through Twitter, as one does, and I saw the Disney ad for Toy Story 4, and it was like all the characters on the blue screen, on like a blue sky background, and they're just like holding hands and flying across the screen. And I was like, well, this has to be like some kind of April Fool's joke. There's no way they're doing a Toy Story 4. There's no possible way. And I was like, it's actually a thing? No way. They're actually making Toy Story 4? I cannot believe this. What are they supposed to do? There's nothing to do with Toy Story 4. Everything was done in Toy Story 3. So I walked into the theater with that exact sentiment. I was like, this is going to be a waste of my money. It's going to be a nice, pretty movie because it's Pixar, but like, what can they do with these characters? There's nothing that they can do with these characters. I thought that everything was tied up, but it wasn't. And I think that what really stood out to me with Toy Story 4 is how well they made a kind of unplanned movie that wasn't planned from the get-go, and they turned what was a perfectly bowed up franchise into still a very interesting story. You know, it's not Toy Story 1 level of storytelling, but it's interesting enough to keep me engaged for the visuals. So bravo to Pixar and the whole team who wrote that, and obviously the lighting people too get a great shout out from Nick. So I think we have our overall ratings. Let's start with scene 1.
Yeah, so it doesn't even start at Bonnie's. We start at Andy's. Which I was pleasantly surprised by. I'm like, whoa, wait, why are we at Andy's? Like, we were done here. And it says, well, first it says, I think, like 9 years ago. I'm like, oh, okay, so we're going back. And then they showed Bo Peep. I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. They're setting up where Bo Peep went. And I thought it was an interesting, like, way to explain away why she wasn't in Toy Story 3. And it was like, okay, well.
Was the original reason because Bo Peep's actress had died?
No, Annie Potts still voiced Bo Peep in this. It was still the same voice actor.
I probably should have done a little bit of research there, but yeah.
No, it was the same exact thing my mom asked as well when we were watching it together. Was, is that a different actress? That has to be a different actress voicing Bo Peep. I'm like,
yeah.
No, IMDb says it's Annie Potts. So, she didn't die.
Things we know, things we find on the internet are never incorrect. So this flashback scene basically is it shows the toys in action a little bit more as far as the organization structure.
Way too in action. Like, pretty much they should have been found out as sentient beings multiple times.
I know. How many times they opened and closed that window? Yeah, totally agree with that statement. But basically, I believe it's RC got stuck outside and it was a big rainstorm, and RC was in the gutter getting pushed away to never be seen again. And Woody and the gang were like, we need to save RC, not Rex.
They didn't even say RC, they just said a toy in need. They didn't really reveal it until he was in the muck. It's like, oh, it's RC.
So the window that was most convenient to RC's position was Andy's sister, who has a name. What's her name?
Molly.
My goodness. It's like, that should have been at the front of my mind. It wasn't.
Molly's
window.
I just saw the movie, so.
I know. I saw it like a week ago, which is not our normal shtick, but I've been kind of busy lately.
No.
Anyway, so we have that beautiful shot of just the raindrops are so realistic and textured, and it really feels real. Like this was the first time on the big screen that I was watching a Pixar, and I was like, this is photorealistic. I know people are like, oh, Nemo's so realistic, or like blah 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 blah, but like something about seeing RC in that gutter with the leaves and the water rushing over him, it looked so real. Like, besides the moving eyeballs and other than that, it looked 100% real, and it was very interesting to see that.
I'd say in terms of the environment, yeah, but in terms of like the toys, yeah, they've got all the beautiful lighting and stuff, but you're still kind of in the uncanny valley, or maybe a little bit off to the side of it. This is a toy. Like, this is still an animated movie, I can tell, but a lot of detail.
Yeah, definitely. But in that moment with RC.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the leaves and gross mud going through the drain. I'm like, ooh, that looks terrible. And great, great and terrible at the same time.
Yeah. So Bo Peep is the leader of Molly's room, very similar to how Woody is the leader of Andy's room. And that was an aspect we'd never seen about Bo Peep. Bo Peep was always kind of the love interest for Woody. And I love the fact that they changed her character from just kind of being a side character to being like the centerpiece of Molly's room. And we get a little bit more story on Bo Peep and a little bit later in the movie about why she was Molly's favorite. But all we need to know now is Bo Peep was quite the leader, telling the Barbies exactly what to do and telling everyone exactly what to do. And a bit of a Slink and Woody try to save RC, and Yeah, that was a close call, but they get them all up there. And I don't know if you want to add any more detail to that,
I'm
but
so confused on how Slinky is still not elastically or plastically bent to the point of
it's
just
not
like not being a Slinky anymore. He should just be like a wire.
physics. Physics and Toy Story do not go together.
Also,
We have
was
to
he
establish
in this movie at all at this point? Like,
Slink?
yeah, I don't remember him in many of the scenes. Just kind of going back to it and thinking about it, like them in the RV or going to different places. I don't. I guess maybe he stayed back at the house or something, but I just don't remember him really at all in any of the scenes. Like,
I don't either.
I remember him at the beginning,
He-
but then that's it.
He's definitely Slink is probably the if he's in this movie, which he might not be very much. I'm thinking back to the RV scene where they're all in the bed in the back of the RV, and I can't picture Slink there.
No.
Okay, picture the Potato Heads, Ham, Rex, and Buzz, and Jesse, and Bullseye, but I don't picture Slink. Anyway, that's kind of sad.
And we can't forget Buzz, which this movie sometimes does.
Yeah, exactly. I'm forgetting Buzz as we speak. So yeah, they save RC, but we're almost caught by the parents, and so
Somehow.
everyone kind of scatters. Yeah, and whatever. Thankfully, they didn't get seen again, but Mom gives Bo Peep away,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone cries in unison.
What was actually really helpful is there's a short on Disney Plus as well that kind of explains Bo Peep's whole entire story from the box to where she ends up, which is a park. And it was a little bit more helpful with that short kind of explaining where she went, where in the movie they kind of dance around it and sometimes they give pinpoints that you could kind of follow along, but other times you're trying to connect the dots and you're like, well, wait, this is all within like 9 years? Okay. She was with someone for a while and with someone else for a while, but then she was also in a antique store for a while. So like, how is this adding up to 9 years?
Yeah.
So thankfully, at least that Pixar short, if you, for some reason, if you're specifically wondering where she was or the explanation of it, there is a explanation for it on Disney Plus, which I think I like a lot more in this kind of day and age, where we kind of had like the deleted scenes, right, for the previous movies to kind of play on. Oh, this is what they were planning on putting in between these two scenes, but they just ran out of time or ran out of money or something else. But with this, they could add content without having to think about it too much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of one of those movies where there's so much going on that it's hard to focus, and it definitely suffers from being the fourth installment in a trilogy, where you have so many characters and so many well-established character traits, I guess, where you know exactly how Buzz or Rex are going to react to a situation, and so they got to find even more ridiculous situations to put everybody in so that it feels like something's new, that something is new happening. Yeah, so the scene where mom gives Bo Peep away, obviously it's all contrived movie, but the guy who's taking Bo Peep conveniently forgot something in the house, and so he has to go back, and Bo Peep and Woody have about 30 seconds together where Woody says, come back, we'll hide you and we can stay together, and Bo Peep was like, no, my time is done, Molly doesn't need me anymore, I'm on to the next kid. And that right there is the spark of what makes this a decent story.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that Woody can't move on from his one child, and Woody is it's a positive, right? Being devoted to something is definitely a positive, but when taken to the extreme, it can be just as much of a negative as not having it at all. And so Woody has so much devotion to his child that he's willing to do crazy things, which we will see in a few minutes. But Bo Peep is dedicated to the child to a certain extent, but when the time is over, she's not trying to artificially extend her time with the child. She did this with Molly. She kind of does this at the end of the movie, and Woody ends up doing that as well. Spoiler alert. So anyway, yeah. So we have that, and Woody and Bo Peep say a nice goodbye, and that was that. Cut to the present.
And then we flash forward to 9 years later, which again, surprising how much Andy ages between 9 years before and 9 years, or I guess to present, where it's like, oh, okay, I guess
they redid that entire Toy Story 3 ending.
Oh yeah, they even did like a little like, hey, in case you forgot or missed, because it's been a while. Here's what happened. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. For me and my wife who were watching, like, oh yeah, we've seen this. For my mom, I think it was helpful for her to be like, oh, that's what happened. Now my heart's breaking again. But thankfully they didn't do the final shot of saying goodbye to Andy, which spared her the tears, which is good. For me, it's like, okay. But yeah, so then we end up in the closet at Bonnie's. And
I know, Woody's in the closet.
Woody, well, no, they're all in the closet first, and then...
Oh, they're all in the closet. Then some of the people come out.
Yeah,
they're no longer in the closet.
Most of them besides the baby toys and Woody.
The chair. And the chair. The chair, I love the chair. That chair's face is perfect, and the 2 or 3 lines that he had.
The chair plays a role in one of the shorts as well. I think one of sport, because I just decided to binge all the Toy Story shorts last night, and there's the whole lot of like, what is blank with Forky, and not really very informative for kids. Honestly, I was very surprised by that. We're not reviewing those, but they weren't really for kids because they weren't really educational. It was more, or I mean, it doesn't have to be educational for a kid, but you'd think this is the perfect time, like, what is love? And you talk about love, but instead it's like, and this is what we think is love, and here's a comedy about a chair having a love triangle between 2 to 3 baby toys, which is just like, what is going on? And then Forky just getting to the middle
innuendo. Oh my god,
it's just the weirdest thing ever. Anyways, yeah, that chair. I was laughing too when I was looking at it at that first scene in Toy Story 4. I'm like, what? This is hilarious. It's like the most shocked face ever, and which is not shocked. It's just its resting face, but it's obviously fitting like the moment of like, oh, Woody's been not really discarded, or forgotten either. It's just more of, I don't want to play with you. I want to play with these things.
Or was it the clock who was like keeping track of everything, and he's like, it's been 4 weeks since you've been played with or something.
Yeah, and then he gets a dust bunny, and I think the funniest name of all the names that they give the dust bunny, because they're like, oh, you got your first dust bunny. You should name it. And at one point they say Tumbleweed. I'm like, perfect name for a dust bunny for a cowboy toy. Tumbleweed.
That's pretty funny.
That made me chuckle.
What did you think of Dolly being the leader of Bonnie's room?
I thought it was fine. I mean, first come, first serve, right? She was kind of the first one there, and Woody is the one that kind of intruded in a way. He's the one who got picked up by Bonnie in Toy Story 3 and taken home, and then he was kind of subjected to the rules of Bonnie's playroom, which was kind of headed by Dolly. But yeah, I mean, they kind of like set precedence as well when Bonnie has to leave the room, and then the toys are kind of like, whoa, we have to stay here because she's probably going to come back and forget something, and she's going to know where she put her toys this time for some reason. And Woody comes out and he's kind of trying to discuss with Dolly, and Dolly's just like, go back in the closet. She's not being played
She's
with.
like talking and walking with him. Yeah. Tosses him. And so Woody's perspective is Bonnie's going to first grade, preschool?
She's going to kindergarten. And kindergarten is a scary thing, in which we can kind of tell from the scene is Bonnie comes back in after her parents kind of try shoehorning her out to get to the car, and she runs back to her bed and starts crying. And Woody is thinking, well, I have to do something. This is my kid now. And I think Bonnie previously asked... Yeah, Bonnie previously asked, hey, can I bring a toy? And her parents very smartly says, no, you're not bringing a toy. Yeah. You'll either get lost or you'll forget it or something else.
Yeah.
Which happens multiple times in this movie as well.
Yeah, true. Poor Bonnie, although it's not all her fault with the toys leaving. No. One of them doesn't think he's a toy.
So anyways, Woody sneaks into the backpack.
And one of the kind of throwaway lines that I think it was, who's the, not the dinosaur, the girl dinosaur, what's her name? Trixie. I'm pretty sure Trixie is played by the lady who is in WandaVision, the hacker lady, the girl who was in the OG Thor movie.
No, I don't know.
No?
It could
I need
be.
to look it up. Their voices sound really familiar in some way. I'm like, I like that character. She's funny. Anyway, I think she's the one who's like, oh no, Woody's going to get Bonnie in trouble. And I was like, that's a good way to look at it. Because if Mom and Dad find a toy in Bonnie's backpack, they're obviously not going to assume that the toy hopped in the backpack of its own volition. So, yeah, gotta watch out for that. So, Woody gets to go to kindergarten.
Again,
And-
because he's been to school
Again.
before, apparently.
He knows the ropes, so he's not scared. But obviously, poor Bonnie is, and she's very timid. And man, I just love the cinematography of that whole scene. Like it's just beautiful lighting, beautiful textures, perfect arrangement. Obviously, it's animated, so they can do whatever they want, and it's just well executed. The teacher introduces herself. Seems like a nice girl, and I was like, huh. I bet you when I was like 4, that teacher would have seemed like really old. And I'm looking and I'm like, I'm probably older than who that teacher was supposed to be. Like, oh boy, I'm getting old now.
Coming from a teaching perspective, my mom watching this is just like, this is a very accurate scene for kids and their first day at kindergarten, because she taught all the way from preschool to, I think, third
really?
or fourth grade. So
Oh,
she's like,
wow.
oh yeah, this is almost exactly what happened with you. You were very scared and timid when you went to kindergarten, and then you felt a little bit better after, and you felt a little bit more confident going back to kindergarten rather than, being scared on the first day. But man, this teacher is also kind of a dirtbag, in the way that she's just like, okay, go put your backpack away, and there's a special seat for you or whatever, or go to sit down or something like that. That Bonnie goes to sit down alone at a table in the back of the classroom without any other kids around her. It's just her, which I'm just like, wouldn't a teacher actually be like, oh no, you're sitting over here, or like, okay, how about you kids come over here? Like, why would you ostracize a kid to a Gesundheit? Why would you ostracize a kid to, or not really ostracize, but basically banish them into their own table alone on their first day at school? It seems
Because obviously the teacher needs to know that Woody's going to be moving around a lot and she can't see it, so it needs to be in the back of the classroom, obviously.
Yeah, so Bonnie, of course, she gets all her art supplies taken away because the teacher says, hey, time to make some drawing or picture or whatever. Go ahead, go nuts, basically. And some kid from another table who has an apple in his mouth takes the art supplies, goes away, and then Bonnie's all alone without any stuff or any art supplies, and she's just sitting there miserable. And so Woody takes to action like he does. It's more of a trait now. It's not even like a thing that he's called to do. It's like he just has to do it. Like it's more of, he needs to do this. He needs to make sure everything is exactly perfect for whatever kid or whatever person he's trying to help. But yeah, so he gets her some crayons from the trash and a spork.
The trash!
Yeah, and so a whole lot of art supplies that were thrown in the trash at some point. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I just realized why you said the trash.
Okay, I know, because you've said that a couple times over text, just trash, whether it's in a live stream or just in our text, and I've always been like, trash, what does that have to do with anything? But we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, so
Trash!
we get the creation of Sporky, in which, or is it Sporky? Yeah, it is Sporky, right? Or is it Forky? I think it's Forky.
Forky.
Is it Forky? Yeah, even though he's a spork.
Forky.
So, not too sure.
Don't ask questions. Bonnie's 4.
I guess so. Anyways, the creation of Forky happens and goes home with Woody, in which never have I seen the most like worried look. I mean, Woody's had a lot of worried looks in the movies, but in this point, he's like, I don't know what I'm dealing with now. Like it's Frankenstein creating his monster, and he's just like, it's alive.
It's alive!
But with horror.
Yeah, poor Fork. So this brings up a really good question on how the whole Toy Story universe is set up. Toys' fundamental mandate is not to be discovered to be sentient, right? All of the toys instantly fall, even if they're in the middle of a fight with each other when a human enters the room. And
Except for Woody,
we saw that
because multiple times he's been in a room with humans.
well, I know exactly, but he gets to break the rules. So you get to break the rules as
And
long
Buzz.
as you
And Jesse.
and
a bunch of
I
other
guess with
toys.
Sid. Anyway, yeah, if you're in this movie, you can break the rules, but if you're not, you're not
Physics
supposed to break the rules, right? But does a piece of trash have to abide by those same rules? And if the piece of trash has to abide by those same rules, then why isn't everything sentient in this universe? Why don't the cars drive around talking to each other? Why,
they do in another movie.
Maybe they do. Oh, they should make a whole 3 or 4 movie show called
probably
Cars.
a trilogy.
Trilogy, yeah, call it a good trilogy.
No failures. It'll be fine. Everyone will love it.
No failures at all. So we get back to Bonnie's room, and Bonnie is so excited with her new toy, Forky. And Woody is trying to introduce Forky to the group, and Forky's like, being Forky with trying to discover how his fingers work. He's just like, huh?
His eyes.
His little googly eyes. The character design of Forky is honestly perfect. Like, it couldn't be any better because you have the right textures, the right materials. Like, there's a scene when Woody's dragging Forky, and you just hear like the popsicle stick going across the concrete. It's just like the perfect sounds, and he's just so flexible with his little what's that called? Sink cleaner,
pipe cleaner,
drain cleaner, pipe cleaner arms. It's just absolutely perfect, and the googly eyes always just looking a little a ways. It's absolutely stunning. But Woody's trying to tell everyone, hey, Bonnie made her new best friend, Forky. Take care of Forky. Make sure nothing happens to Forky. And then Trixie's like, Forky just went in the trash. And it's like, no, Forky, you cannot stay in the trash.
Was it Trixie?
And then begins a literally 5-minute montage of Woody trying to keep Forky out of the trash.
Oh my goodness. Because then we get the announcement that because Bonnie did so well her first day of kindergarten, or at least this is how they set it up. It's probably just the parents set up anyways.
Yeah.
They go on a road trip in an RV, and so Bonnie gets to take a good amount of her toys, which I'm surprised the amount of toys that she gets to bring. I'm pretty sure when I went on an RV trip with my mom, I didn't get to bring that many toys. I got to bring like maybe 1 or 2, just so that way I don't lose them. But yeah, then we get the montage of all the times Forky is just trying to jump into the trash because at his core, he knows he's trash and he needs to go in the trash because it's warm and cozy and cuddly and you're just surrounded by it. Which then, I think I made this comment to my wife. I'm like, doesn't Forky know about the dump and the horrors that we saw?
You would love Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Trash!
You would have had so much fun.
The thing is, like, would he get picked up by the metal then with his pipe cleaner arms? Because I think they're made out of metal.
Yeah, probably.
But then, so then he'd basically just make it to the same location. Ooh, no, he might be stuck and then just get incinerated in the metal portion. Because
maybe
he wouldn't know what to do when he's floating on the ceiling with all the other trash. But, anyways. I thought about that. I'm like, you do you, Forky. You go to the trash. You have fun on that adventure. But instead, of course, Woody is trying to save him to the point where Buzz is talking with Woody about, hey, I can take the load off of you. And Woody's just like, no, I got this. I need to do this. This is my meaning now. This is my purpose. It's Bonnie doesn't want to play with me, but I'm going to help Forky out.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen a shift in Woody's character from him being man in charge of the room and Andy's favorite toy to just being man in charge of the room in Toy Story 3 where he was, leading the group. And then he even got that stripped away and he was kind of loner toy for part of the Toy Story 3 movie. But now in this movie, he has no meaning to Bonnie aside from... He has no more meaning to Bonnie than the toy chair that she has in her closet, right? Like, he's not even in the core group of toys she plays with on a regular basis. And so he's shifted his meaning away from playing with Bonnie or being played with by Bonnie or being held by Bonnie to helping Bonnie in any way he can. And the only way that he can help her right now is by keeping Forky around. And so that's the interesting twist that made this movie interesting to watch. Because I've already seen Woody have to contend with not being the favorite toy. I've already watched Woody have to make a decision between living forever in a museum or being played with every day. I've already watched the decision that Woody's had to make. I'm on podcast 3 of today. This is going well. Anyway, so this is an interesting spin on Woody's character for Toy Story. Wow. All right. This is this is about to go really well here.
take
You
a
better start
drink,
talking
Nick.
there, Mike.
Anyways,
I'm getting a drink and reset
yeah.
my
So
voice.
then we get the point where Forky gets away because while Woody's talking with Buzz, kind of like, "Hey, I need to do this. This is me now." Forky again escapes from Bonnie's grasp. Which, who lets a child sleep in a child seat in an RV that probably isn't the safest place to put the child seat? Anyways, Forky, of course, gets his chance to escape. Somehow the windows open in the back of the RV while they're driving in the night and it's cold. Like, who didn't get up to close the window? I don't know. Anyways, he hops out and Woody's just like, oh, dear goodness, what do I do? And so then he jumps out and is like, okay, well, I think he asks Ham or someone like how far, or maybe it's Trixie, how far they are from the next rest stop, and it's about 5 miles. In which they don't really say, oh yeah, it's just 5 miles straight, or like it's 5 miles and then you take a right and another left and then a right. Like they're just like, it's 5 miles.
Well, thankfully they were right at their destination and like not at the beginning of the trip.
Yeah. And so then Woody jumps out and then finds Forky in the ground, and then Forky at this point gets a nice long talk with Woody, and Woody basically just describes Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 for Forky, and gives a little bit more perspective to Forky, so that instead of Forky thinking the trash is trash and that's what I am and that's what I'm going to be surrounded by, it's you're loved by Bonnie and you need to get back to her because she loves you and cares about
he
you.
still wasn't getting it though, and that was so much fun to watch this seasoned toy veteran try to explain, you're her favorite toy. That's you're Andy's favorite toy, and no, Bonnie, and that got on that little sidetrack. So great dialogue writing, but who's Andy? I know. I love Forky's voice. I don't know who voice acted for. I don't have the IMDb up for that, but Forky, amazing character. One of my favorite characters, honestly, because he's just so random and like he can be very heartfelt in one moment and then very lost in another, and give the funniest line ever, the funniest line of the entire movie. Skipping ahead a little bit, the funniest line in the entire movie is Forky telling the doll from... What's the doll's name? From the antique store.
Oh,
what's her name?
Goodness.
Wow. All right, I gotta get the IMDb up.
Yeah, get the IMDb. I think it's something that maybe rhymes with doll or dolly. Gabby.
Gabby.
Yeah, I just got it.
Yeah, I think we got that in unison. Gabby. Yeah, so it was when Forky was telling Gabby, he said... Yeah, Woody, I've known him my whole life. I'm just like, 2 days, yeah. It's just like, that's perfect dialogue.
I mean, this all takes place in the span of like 3 or 4 days, maybe.
Yeah.
Which I applaud them because, I mean, I guess usually it takes place in around 3 or 4 days. But it's like a good amount of time to where like Forky develops as a character and actually realizes stuff, not like within an hour or a day. It's like several days that Forky has to contemplate life. Instead of contemplate trash.
Trash!
Again, I would still love an alternate reality where Forky does make it to the trash and ends up at the dump.
That needs to be a short. Trash!
It's like a dream that he has or something. And then just gets swept away by one of the dozers.
Forky's dream.
Yeah. Anyways, so they get to the town after having a long walk. And there's also the scene that you mentioned where Forky's just like, can you hold me or carry me?
No.
And Woody's just like, no.
Hold me? No.
Dragging him around, which I thought that was pretty funny as well. But yeah, so they end up arriving at the town that Bonnie and her family stopped at for the night. And it's got a carnival, and it's got a nice little downtown area. It reminded me of, is it Casper, Wyoming? Or no, it's...
Wall Drug?
No, it's... oh, goodness. Right below the Tetons. I totally forget. Jackson Hole. Yeah, it reminded me of Jackson Hole. Thank you. Very much kind of that small town vibe. Mountains kind of... Well, I don't know if there's mountains nearby necessarily in this town.
Oh, yeah. Not...
Well, yeah, in Jackson Hole, yeah. But like in...
like, yeah, 4. Jackson Hole has some of the best mountains in the world.
Beautiful mountains there. Anyways, so they get there and they find out where the RV park is, but then Woody gets distracted by the ground, which you're like, why is he looking at the ground? And then the camera pans up and it's Bo Peep's lamp. which I thought was a great way to kind of rope her in. It wasn't like, oh, they just stumbled upon her. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this was hers. She must be here. And so, for the first time, we don't see Woody actually being loyal to his kid. He's not like, oh,
Yeah.
we need to get back to Bonnie as soon as possible. It's, well, hold on, I think my friend's here. Let's go check this out
And
first.
even in that heart-to-heart conversation, it's switched. Now Forky's the guy who's like, no, we need to go see Bonnie. What do you mean? And so now kind of Forky's taken on the role of Woody in just that short little time, but it was such a good switch because now Woody has the freedom to, not have to take care of Forky. Woody probably should have just said, go find the RV and,
we
I'm
probably
gonna go
would have
check
gone to
out
the situation
Bonnie.
of trash RV, trash RV, trash RV. Like right next to each other because there's trash cans near RV parks.
That's true.
So you just be like, trash.
Hopefully Buzz finds him.
Yeah, and then we get introduced to Gabby, who...
No, we get introduced to the world's creepiest ventriloquy dolls ever.
I guess, yeah, not immediately Gabby.
Ah!
Oh, goodness, what are their names? I think they all have basically the same name. It's like...
Dick or something? I don't know.
No,
Dyke.
something. Anyways,
Ventriloquy. They're the world's creepiest ventriloquy dolls. How about that? Ugh.
my mom was trying to come up with the word for it, and she couldn't get ventriloquist, and she's like, what are the dummies or whatever? And so she like looks up alternate name for puppet dolls, and Google just spits out dummy.
You are a dummy. Yeah.
But yeah, so the ventriloquist dolls we get to meet, and then Forky and I was about to say Buzz, Woody get to talk with the head honcho of the antique store, Gabby, in her carriage that she's being pushed around in, which again
So
also
creepy.
very very creepy area. In which this is the point in the movie I'm like, oh, okay, this is the big bad.
They're called the dummies. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, no, but there's a name for them.
The dummies.
Oh, like Forky even is like, oh, thank you, blank or whatever. But no, like this is at the point where I'm like, okay, this is just another Lotso, or this is another Sid kind of in a way.
The villain in this isn't as good as other Toy Stories.
Yeah,
just because we've seen it before.
The villain is not as villainous in regards to like, you will be destroyed, or I can't have you around anymore.
Literally talking about organ harvesting. I would highly disagree with that.
In this, it's I'm defective.
Hi, you have a heart that works. Let me take it.
Well, to be fair, I mean, we get the whole like reason why is that she's never really been loved or cared for, and she came out of the factory defective, so it's she's never been allowed to. And so this is her moment to be able to actually have a good voice box. And of course, Woody gets out of there, but sadly, Forky does not. Forky is stuck with Gabby, but Woody gets out because of... Is it Bo Peep? I forget. No.
No, not yet.
He finds a girl in the antique store because it opens up, and the girl takes Woody.
And that girl is... Have you heard the backstory on this? You probably haven't.
There's a backstory on the girl.
No, yeah, actually there is. So, do you remember the very first Pixar short?
The very first Pixar short.
The old man with the chess game.
Yeah, I
the
remember
one
that.
man playing against himself. That guy...
I don't think it's the first
is
one.
the husband... The very first one. In the Pixar universe... Well, okay, it's not the very first Pixar
There's a couple other ones. There's like a snowman one. There's some other ones.
Those are like... Yeah, sorry, I should have been more specific. Like, in our current iteration of how we know Pixar shorts, like, alongside an actual movie.
Gotcha.
This was the first short. Yeah, it wasn't the Bumblebee.
So the old guy
is
is related somehow.
Yeah. So the old guy is related to the lady who runs the antique store, who's the grandma of the little girl, whose mother is the hippie.
Okay.
So, fun Pixar deep dive. There are whole YouTube videos talking about this, but evidently with like stuff on the wall, because we get a surprising amount of information on this storekeeper. We get to see her house, we get to see her bathtub, we get to see her bedroom, and like people have like pieced together like through like still frames of like pictures and like timelines like she's married to the guy who plays chess by himself.
There's so many different theories.
So we meet his granddaughter.
But yeah,
finally.
So Woody gets this granddaughter to take him home because he's trying to escape and doesn't get Forky to just in time. So sadly, Forky's stuck with the Gabby Gabby.
Well, he broke the rules by pulling his pull string, and what's her face looked around. That's how he got out of it.
Which is more creepy as well because this toy just started making noise without any interaction, which I guess kind of happens sometimes. Like weird, but anyways, we're dwelling too long on this. He gets taken to the park. The girl plays with him, and then for some reason her crazy hippie mom doesn't think, okay, my ginger daughter who has very fair skin needs sunscreen.
Yes.
And she needs
That's what hippies are very concerned about.
in the middle of playtime. I'm like, what? You would have thought of this before you went outside, like or even leaving the house. Like, you need sunscreen. Anyways, bad parenting skills. Woody gets left alone for not even like a second. The kid leaves. And
It's just one pass of the swing.
That's right, because he's on the swing, and then one pass of the swing, and he's gone. You're like, oh, yep. He got out as soon as possible. And then, what is it? What happens? He ends up
Back
at
to the antique store.
Back to the antique store.
No. He finds...
He ends up at a little play park, which, again, a whole bunch of kids end up at the toy park, in which they're playing with these toys really nicely, I'd say. But still, like... Who just lets a whole busload of kids play at the play park with a whole bunch of toys that have been probably sitting there for a long time? Like, ew, germs. Maybe that's just me. Or just COVID me. But yeah, and then, Woody, in all these toys that he sees being played with and he's being tossed around as well, he sees a familiar figure in which comes in the form of the sheep from Toy Story 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. And he follows them.
And what are the sheep's names?
Billy, Goat, and Gruff.
Good job.
Or as I think Woody calls them, he's like Bobby, Bill, and something else, or Gertrude. In which they're girls. In which the girls are named Billy, Goat, and Gruff. Which, okay.
3 heads is better than 1.
Anyways, they take him to, or he follows them basically to Bo Peep, and then we get the nice explanation of where Bo Peep's been, in which she traded hands multiple times through different owners and then ended up at the antique shop and then got out of the antique shop because she didn't like Gabby Gabby, and then ended up at the park where she repairs toys and gets to play with kids, in which somehow these kids are playing with a porcelain doll, not breaking her, and then just leaving her at the end of the day, not taking her home.
Well, they broke her. Her arm fell off.
Yeah, but I guess it had glue, so I guess okay.
Yeah.
Because we don't see until later that she actually just puts a bandage on it, in which you're like, where'd she get the glue the first time, and why didn't she apply it this time? Though I guess they're in a rush. Anyways, yeah, so then Woody's like, hey, we gotta get Forky back at the antique shop, and she's like, okay, I guess I'll help you this one time for old time's sake. And then we get to meet also Bo Peep's side chick friend or whatever.
What's her name?
Giggles.
Officer Giggles.
Yeah. Or I think it's just Giggle, but yeah. She's a little Polly Pocket.
No,
she has her own
Giggle McDimples. Giggle McDimples is her full name.
Yeah, but she does have a little she's basically Polly Pocket, where she has a little plaything. But yeah, and then, oh goodness. I guess then we flash back to Forky and Gabby Gabby where they're talking, and Gabby Gabby wants to learn more about Woody. And so then Forky just spills the beans because, of course, he's only been alive for like a day now or a day and a half. So he's like, okay.
He's known Woody his whole life.
Yeah.
2 days.
And I think we flash then over to the RV where everyone's like, where's Woody? He hasn't come back and we're going to leave soon.
Well, more importantly, Bonnie's like, where's Forky?
That's right.
And the toys are trying to give her a fork or a spoon. And I think Ham was like, we should have given her the spoon. It'd be much safer. Anyway.
Yeah. And so then
that's funny.
At one point, Woody talks about his inner voice. And so then Buzz uses his inner voice, but his inner voice is not an actual inner voice because for some reason he's now a blockhead and isn't really as deep and more emotionally invested as he was in Toy Story 3 and 2. He thinks inner voice is meaning the voice box that's in him. And so then his voice box basically says, okay, go find him.
Thankfully it was on that on that one. You know, that rotation.
Yeah, except for then later we find that the rotation isn't really as choosy because it basically tells him multiple times at one point, go home, go home, go home. Mission's over.
Go, stay, hurry, rush. Mission's over. Retreat, attack. Poor Buzz is like, ah. Anyway, yeah, we get Gabbying her ears off of Forky, given all of this backstory on why Gabby wants a voice box and kind of what her emotions are behind it. And I would say it's a lot more, her villain character is a lot more relatable than Lotso's villain character. Lotso is just angry at the world after he was treated unfairly, which you and I are treated unfairly on a regular basis, you know, whether it's getting cut off in traffic or whatever. But we don't go start a whole cult out of a child daycare. So I think it's not quite as relatable as Gabby, who she feels broken and she wants to have an experience that normal people have or normal toys do. And so it's kind of like this disability argument, which is really, you know, we've all struggled with some kind of, you know, thing that we don't think is normal and other people do. And it's very relatable, much more relatable than Lotso, I guess. And so definitely. I really did appreciate that kind of angle that they took the story.
I agree. That's something that my mom pointed out as well. I'm like, wow, that's a great scope to look through in this regard instead of just, oh, she just wanted a voice box. It's like, no, she was a disabled toy and she just wanted to be treated like other toys. And which I guess, spoiler alert, she does, and it's poorly.
Yeah, exactly.
The more realistic version of Toy Story, I guess. Toys basically being discarded. They're like, yeah.
But I have to mention, while we're still up in the china cupboard with Gabby and Forky, there's one shot that really encapsulates how much I love Toy Story 4's cinematography. And I say cinematography because they don't just animate on a two-dimensional screen. They have a whole three-dimensional scene with lighting, imperfections, dust, and they move a virtual camera through that space. And I think I might have even mentioned it in one of the previous reviews that we've done, but this is probably one of my favorite shots of the entire franchise because it's so unnecessary. They used what's called a split diopter shot, which is where there's this little... basically looks like a lens cap, but you put it on top of the lens of a camera, and half of it is a basically magnifying glass, and the other half is just open. And so what that does is you can have half of your shot be in focus, and the other half, you can have two basically focal points in your shot. So you can have a focal point on Gabby, and then in the background you can have another focal point on Forky. And there's a very cinematic, very stylized look to a split diopter shot, and if you were to Google it, you'd see exactly what I mean. But it's interesting, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so I noticed that this was a split diopter shot, and my mind was blown because keep in mind, a split diopter shot is really just a hack in real life to be able to get two things in focus at once. Where in this virtual world that they created, they could have just made both of them in focus and not blinked an eye about it. But they, in a virtual camera, created a kind of workaround that we use in the real world to create this artistic look of a split diopter shot. And I was just, anyway, props to the Pixar team.
Yeah,
I always have to point that out.
It'd be different looking if everything was in focus as well. So it'd look a little more flat and or fake.
Oh, totally. It would look very unbelievable. But they're just so committed to this. And anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of blurry, kind of like out of focus stuff that I noticed as well in this movie.
So much bokeh. The bokeh was unreal, especially inside of the arcade.
Jeez, everything was
pinball
bokeh.
Machine.
I didn't realize until they got to the carnival at night. I'm like, wow, they really went all in on all the bokeh and all the ambiance of a carnival at night, which I thought was nice. I guess that kind of leads us towards where, what's it called, Bo Peep and Woody end up. I believe, right? They end up...
we missed Buzz. So Buzz gets introduced to probably the two worst characters in the movie.
It's not Woody.
I don't mind the two characters, really. As like characters in them. There's like Bunny and... What's the other guy's name? Ducky? Bunny and Ducky? I mean, I think it's Key and Peele who play those, right? Yeah, it's Key and Peele. Key and Peele play Bunny and... Ducky and... Ducky and Bunny.
Ducky Bunny.
I don't mind them as characters. They'd be fine, but the problem is there's already so many characters in this movie. They did not need to add another two. Like,
I think having them at the carnival alone, I think would have satisfied me, but they kind of just carried them through until I guess they have some helpful stuff near the end.
They have a pretty funny scene with the grandma, but it's
I didn't realize they would do that, and a lot of points which we'll get to as well. But
it was pretty good. But it's like this movie.
Points.
This movie's biggest problem is it has too many characters. And at the beginning, it was like, all right, we know we're going into a movie that is literally the fourth iteration on a 3-movie franchise. What can you do here? And they didn't spend screen time on Slink or Ham or Rex. Instead, they focused on these new characters, which I don't mind. Giggles McDimple or Gabby Gabby or Forky. But, like, really, do we need Ducky and Bunny as well? Like, I'm sorry. That's too many characters. We need to pare that down a little bit. But they do have some funny lines, so I forgive it. But it's just like, that's one point where it's like, if you fix that, it probably would have bumped the score up from like a 5 to like a 5.5 if they just eliminated Ducky and Bunny. So, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Buzz meets them, and then they all meet Bonnie. Not Bonnie. Bo Peep.
Bo Peep.
Bonnie.
They don't meet Bonnie until the very end, I think.
Yeah.
No, they don't even meet Bonnie. I don't think Bunny and Ducky meet Bonnie ever. But, yeah. So then Buzz gets out of there, I think. Yeah, because Bunny and Ducky are harassing him. And Ducky ends up getting his foot stuck in Buzz's helmet. Gets them out of there. And then they somehow... Oh, yeah, they find... Woody and Bo Peep breaking into the antique store where I think they say look up or shoot for the stars or something like that. Buzz's inner voice. Well,
also, I guess at this point, Buzz does have a pretty important moment before he meets the stuffed animals. He has the moment where they play the "You Can Fly" song, and
oh, yeah, that's right.
I don't know,
because he gets flung up. By,
and
Ferris wheel or something.
I know we're still in the first act here, like kind of at the end of the first act, but I'm like, oh wow, like that just shows you how little Buzz has to do in this movie, where his big moment has to be at the beginning of the movie, and it's kind of sad, and it's a nice moment and everything. And as a Toy Story fan, it was nice to see Buzz have another, You Can Fly moment, but I don't know, it was sad that it had to happen this early, and his character didn't have much to do.
Yeah, I don't think the music was a really strong thing either in this movie to me. It didn't really play too much into many situations. Yeah, there's some of the creepy times in the antique store that maybe the music played somewhat of a role or some of the sound. But I'd say sound good, music not as iconic. And they didn't even end the movie on You've Got a Friend in Me either. They kind of broke that tradition with this, in which I was a little bit... not frustrated, but I was like, oh, yeah, I guess this is a new age of Toy Story. They don't need to keep on rehashing You've Got a Friend in Me, which makes sense. But anyways.
Well, yeah. I do always cry at the end with Toy Story 4 in the same way that I cry with Toy Story 3. If I decide to, I will cry on both of them. But... yeah, you're right. There's a little bit of lacking in the originality in the soundtrack, because I did listen to the soundtrack after I watched it last week, and I was like, oh, I should listen to the soundtrack, and I was like, there's really nothing here, nothing of consequence. I mean, it's good music, but it's not wonderful.
No, it's definitely not iconic in any way.
Yeah, I think we're kind of jumping around, but we need to keep moving here because I only have like 30 minutes left on my SD card right now.
Poor Nick.
Recorded so many podcasts, we're almost filling up 256 gigabytes of video.
So refresh me, Nick. So I think, was it Buzz and Ducky and Bunny end up in the antique store, I think? Or did they meet on the
They meet on the roof. They meet on the roof.
Right,
they meet Bonnie, Woody, and...
Bunny and Ducky attack Buzz.
Yeah.
So that was pretty funny as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they
we have kids. We have a kid. Wait, a real kid? Like a kid? A human kid? Yes. It's like their characters are funny but unnecessary.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Woody kind of is just like, we just need to get this done here. If you want to see a kid, we got a kid. We'll take you to her. She'll love you. Just stop it. We need to get this done. But yeah, they end up going in, which this is like the silliest thing ever. They're at the top of the store, like in the rafters or wherever, and then go to the bottom of the store. And they're like, well, wait, how do we get to Forky to save him from the center area? Well, here we have to climb up here to the top and then jump over, tightrope over. Like, you could have done that at the beginning if you knew that, or like before you get down to the ground, like think, well, where do we need to go? The center. So that means we have to use this, but whatever. And then Woody almost gets himself caught because he finds Bonnie's backpack at the store.
Oh yeah.
And then is very like, hey, we need to go now. We need to get you to Bonnie now. And that's again a fatal flaw with Woody, is that he's so loyal at this point that he risks everything for Bo Peep just to get Forky back. In which then, of course, then they discover a cat, which it's like I guess second. I guess no. There's an animal in every single movie. The first one was Buster. Or not Buster. Buster was the second one.
I think we just heard Buster in the first one. I don't think we saw him.
No, it was Sid's dog. Scud.
Oh!
Scud. I think.
Yes, Scud. Ooh.
So there's Scud, and then there's Buster in Toy Story 2 and 3. And then we get this cat, which I don't know if they... I think he has a name. I think the old woman calls him by a name. Yeah. But anyways, the cat is notorious for tearing things apart, and we get the funny scene of Key and Peele being like, that's what we look like? On the inside?
On the inside? There's so much fluff.
But yeah, and so then...
So, Woody kind of botches the plan, and then Bo Peep has to save it, and she goes and finds what's his name? Jean-Pierre's favorite toy?
Oh my goodness.
What's that guy's name?
Starts with a C, I think. Played by the wonderful... Man, we're both at a loss at this point. Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves plays...
That's all right. Not Combat Carl.
No, Combat Carl is... Actually, I don't know if he was either a callback from one of the old Toy Story movies, but he was in one of the shorts as well, which is pretty funny seeing him in this. I'm like, Combat Carl made it here! Oh, goodness, he's a daredevil.
I think his name is Carl, though, right?
No, it's not. It's not Carl. It's something else. But basically, Keanu Reeves plays this action figure stuntman, like, basically kind of like the American... Oh, I forget his name already. The guy who jumps over the Grand Canyon. We've already lost...
Duke Kaboom!
Duke Kaboom. He plays Duke Kaboom, which is kind of like... Not Daredevil. I forget what the guy's name is. I'm sorry. Man,
anyway,
we're
let's keep moving.
So much right
basically,
Duke Kaboom.
Basically, we have Bo Peep going into a pinball machine, which is like a club, yeah. And she finds Duke Kaboom, Duke Kaboom is a very two-dimensional character, which is fine because we got so many characters, we don't have any room for 3D characters. Duke Kaboom's big thing is he didn't do what he was advertised on the box, so his child hated him because he couldn't even make the jump. Basically, it's like a little action figure on a motorcycle who is supposed to be able to go through flames of fire and like rings of fire or whatever. Didn't actually work. So he's basically a broken mess of a character who has zero self-confidence and will break on a whim if you mention Jean-Pierre or whatever his name is. And yeah, that's his entire character. His arc is fairly
They recruit him
predefined.
for a big jump between a bookcase and the middle antique case where Forky is. And meanwhile, Buzz and Bunny and Ducky are trying to find the key to the case because they don't think of this at first, that they have to unlock the case. And so we get the funny scene that we mentioned earlier of Ducky and Bunny like, oh, I think we have a plan. And then they don't really do like a cut shot of like, oh, like here's the idea of the plan. It's almost just like a zoom out or whatever, and you just have Bunny and Ducky basically attack the old lady. And it's like, whoa, okay, they went really far with this, but then they kind of cut back to Buzz being like, no. And it's like, oh,
no, that wouldn't work.
That was a thought that Bunny and Ducky had that they were kind of explained to Buzz. And then it happens, I think, a few more times where it's just more elaborate
and it keeps
schemes.
escalating.
Yeah, to where what you mentioned earlier as well, Nick, of we get to the point where the old lady goes home. She's done with work for that day. She's taking out her dentures. She's eating dinner or whatever. And then at one point during the night, Ducky and Bunny come and attack her again, which... Oh my goodness! I think the funniest part is actually at the end credits that we'll probably hopefully get to. That's one of their ideas of what to do, because they're faced with another similar dilemma. But anyways, they get the key because the old lady just drops the key right in front of them and doesn't notice the toys, which is even more funny. I thought that was pretty good comedy as well. Like, there's all these different, like, here's how it could possibly go. Here's the problem. Let's try to solve it. And the solution is just stand there. She puts the key right next to you. You're good to go.
Yeah.
So then...
And then Bo Peep asks later, though, how did you get the keys? Was it easy?
It was hard.
No.
It was tough.
No, it was very hard. Very difficult.
We're not going to talk about it. It was tough, though. But yeah.
So
they get Duke Kaboom on top of a bookcase.
Duke Kaboom moment. Yep.
And Woody then realizes, oh, I'm actually going on this ride. And they get him onto Duke Kaboom's bike. And then at the last second, of course, like you said, Duke Kaboom has a crisis where he's like, wait, I can't do this. I can't make this jump. I can't do this. I'm not Duke Kaboom. Or like, I'm not the most amazing stunt rider. I'm a fluke. And so then Woody tries correcting the motorcycle and basically gets there, where there's a string, I think, attached to his pull string, and he ends up getting the key he ends up getting to the door that's locked for the central china cabinet or whatever, and then everyone rides on the line, or not everyone, I guess Bo Peep rides onto the line to get to Woody, while Duke Kaboom distracts the cat on the ground, I think, or something else.
All right, yeah. So basically, what happens inside?
Yeah, do you remember? It's been a week.
No, I don't. Something happens.
So what happens is Gabby Gabby tells Forky they're gonna play hide and seek earlier before that day.
Yeah.
And then they find Forky hiding, and then Gabby Gabby comes with her sentries that were acting as sentries on top of the case, but now are her bodyguards or whatever. And they try tearing out Woody's voice box, almost get it through, which I was very surprised how visceral they were going with it, like fluff going everywhere.
I know, ripping the fluff out of him.
Yeah. And so, So anyways, they get out of there, again, without Forky, somehow. Everyone makes it out, but Bunny's stitching has kind of failed on his side, probably because he's been a toy hanging forever, and his stitching is pretty bad. And so then... Woody's
they kind of regroup just outside, and Woody's like, "We need to go back in and get Forky. We have to do this." And Bo Peep's like,
"Nope.
Look at us. We're in no position to go back in there. They just beat our butts, and Bonnie's not that valuable anyway." And that was kind of a really touching moment because Woody is such a character who's so devoted to his child that it hurts him when he has to make that decision between following Bo Peep and her freedom or helping the child. And so Woody, again, begrudgingly chooses to go back in all by himself. Even Buzz doesn't follow him, which is normally those two are inseparable as far as being on the same page now.
Mm-hmm.
He makes it back in and pretty much immediately gives himself up to Gabby Gabby and says, "You can have my voice box, just give me Forky." And Gabby Gabby does the procedure and
the mannequins do the procedure. But then they both kind of get up, and we get to hear Gabby Gabby's voice box for the first time. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's kind of, I guess, pleasant. But then you hear Woody's, and it's all distorted, which, honestly, after all the years of being played with by Andy, I would have expected Woody's voice box to be like that. So I guess canonically,
and keep in mind, he did get fully restored by the old man. And
but there was never really any mention of like a voice box or anything like that. It was mainly just stitching and stuff. But now it's just like crude stitching on the back of Woody. And then we get the nice
Woody sacrifices for Forky, and that's nice to see. But you also get the feeling that Woody has lost all purpose at this point.
He sacrificed everything at this point.
Mm-hmm. He's given it all to Bonnie, and Bonnie doesn't even really acknowledge his existence, and he's just kind of feeling jaded as a toy who's sacrificed everything, including part of himself, to make Bonnie happy. And I think it's at this point where the character Woody is most ready to be developed. Like, he's at a point where the next part of the movie can happen. And
which is probably the most perfect point for Gabby Gabby as well, because we get the wonderful scene where they're about to leave in Bonnie's backpack because Bonnie makes it back to the place, and Woody's like, let's just get back in the backpack and go. Mm-hmm. And I think he gets Forky back in. I don't think Woody gets back in.
Yeah, he gets Forky back in. I don't know why he doesn't get in, too.
I forget. I think I don't know, maybe he watches what happens, in which Gabby Gabby finally gets played with by the girl.
Yes, he wants to see. Yeah, that's it. Forky's like, it's happening, Woody, it's happening.
But Forky gets into the backpack, but Woody doesn't, and Woody gets to watch what potentially is... Oh, no, that's what happens. They both watch, right? Because Forky's like, oh, this is happening. They watch what happens, in which instead of Gabby Gabby being played with, she ends up being discarded by the kid that we saw earlier in the movie that took Woody. And which then is the most heartbreaking moment ever for her, because it's like, ooh, she finally gets to get played with for the first time.
50 or 60 years or whatever, this build-up has been happening, and she's wanted to be played with. But
I think it was built around the same time as Woody, around the 80s or whatever. So yeah, close to that.
50s.
50s? Was it 50s?
At the beginning of the movie, they say when Woody and Gabby first meet, she's like, were you made in 57 or something? Yeah.
Maybe, 57. I guess, yeah.
Anyway.
That does sound familiar. Anyways, yeah, so then during that moment, Forky gets to go back with Bonnie. Woody gets left behind, I think. And then during that time, I think Buzz gets back. Does he get back? Yeah, he does get back.
Yeah,
and then the toys have to delay the RV, in which they poke a hole in the wheel, or Jesse does. And then Bo Peep is trying to get back to the carnival ride because the carnival's leaving the next day, and realizes that she's made a mistake after talking with Giggles, and then comes back, and then they're like, okay, well, let's get you back to Bonnie because Bonnie will like you, I guess, or we'll find some kid that'll like you. And so then it's now the whole rush to get back to the RV before it leaves, and then the very funny scene.
The leaving scene.
Yeah, the very funny scene of the RV does end up leaving, but I think Buzz...
Okay, this entire movie, though, the unicorn guy is obsessed with Dad going to jail.
Oh, yeah, because they want to delay the RV as much as possible from leaving, and so the unicorn guy's like, hey, let's just get him to go to jail.
Let's just frame him for murder so he goes to jail.
Yeah, so we get this funny scene where the RV finally leaves after the dad's been fixing the wheel, I think all day, actually. And so then the toys have to... Basically, at this point, the toys should be figured out as sentient beings, but they're not.
Right.
Where they...
turn left!
Yeah, they end up unplugging the GPS, and Trixie becomes the GPS voice, in which you can obviously tell that the GPS voice is not coming from the screen or the audio system. It's coming from below your feet.
And why would you even listen to it when it's like, we're not turning around? What do you mean?
Go right now!
Go right, hurry, you're missing it!
And which then, of course, Trixie gets the RV to turn back around, and then at this point, the parents are figuring out, let's just ignore it. And then the toys are like, well, what do we do now if they're going to ignore us? And it's like, well, let's just play with the electrical system. So they start playing with the brakes and the accelerator, unplugging, replugging. And so the dad's having trouble with braking and going. And then, of course, the cops get involved. And so the unicorn guy gets very excited over it because now the cops are pulling over the RV, which somehow ends up in the middle of the carnival.
Right.
Don't know why he drives all the way to the middle of the carnival, but I guess for story-wise it makes sense.
Reasons.
Yeah. And so then they're kind of positioned ready to meet Woody because Woody's trying to get Dolly back because Dolly's supposed to play with Bonnie. And so then Duke Kaboom gets a nice redemption arc where they're on top of the Ferris wheel, and Duke Kaboom gets to string some flag string or whatever all the way from the top of the Ferris wheel across the Ferris wheel arm, up, over, and through into a fiery hole, quote unquote. Smashes his head on the light bulb, but he's fine, and he's super happy about it because he got to.
I made it.
And then ties it off, and everyone gets to make it down, and that conveniently puts him right next to the RV. But right before they get to the RV, they start hearing crying, or at least Dolly starts hearing crying, and she looks down and she sees a kid. Or not Dolly. Gabby. Yeah. Sees a kid crying. And then Woody sees the kid crying, and it's kind of like that mutually, like...
There's the moment.
Here's the moment. Are you sure you want to take this moment? And Gabby's like, I think I can, but I don't know if she won't like me. And I think at that point, Bo Peep's like... Go for it. Do it.
Go for it.
Which I think
Do
is
it,
the
hurry
most
up.
touching part of this movie. This is what almost made me cry. It wasn't what
Yeah.
happens after this, but it's the fact that Gabby gets this transformation from not being played with to helping out a child who's lost and crying because she has lost her parents, and she's there for her. And of course, the pull string gets pulled by the kid at one point because Gabby gets placed right in the corner of light where she could be seen, and Bunny and Ducky throw a ball. I think that's maybe the Ducky and Bunny's redemption as well, is that they get to throw a ball and initiate this situation. And so then the kid finds Gabby and then pulls the string. And of course, Gabby's like, "Hi, I'm Gabby. Something like, I'm here for you, basically.
Let's be friends."
Yeah, let's be friends. And so then, very, very touching scene. Almost made me cry because then...
I love it. I love it when a good movie redeems the villain and in a way that's satisfying. And this is a rare instance of it being pulled off very well.
This is better than
I now
Waltz's
love
End.
Gabby just as much as I love any other Toy Story hero, where it's like she's fully redeemed, and all the evil things that she did was just to, you know about everything. So yeah, it's beautiful.
Ding, ding, ding.
Sorry. Ding, ding, ding.
Anyways, so then we then get the awning extending from the RV because it's right next to where Woody and Bo Peep were at the top of the roof. And it's a goodbye moment for Bo Peep and Woody because they're finally getting back and it's time to go. And Bo Peep is a lost toy, quote unquote, or Woody is not. And then we get the point where Buzz is like, "All right," or like he's on the awning and Woody's saying his goodbyes and goes back to Buzz. And this is, I guess, Buzz's final moment to shine, even though he didn't shine at all in this movie. He didn't get enough screen time. But he's like,
"So long, partner.
She'll be fine." Like, telling him, Bonnie will be fine. Not Bo Peep. Bonnie will be fine. You go. And so then we get the very, very short goodbye of Jessie and all the original toys.
Literally every other character that was shoved into the toy bin at the very bottom of the entire movie. And we have to give them all a little bit of screen time.
The potato heads. But then they're like, "Oh wait, is that Bo Peep?" And then they say hi and then bye.
Yeah.
And then we get Rex being like, "Is Woody a lost toy now?" As they're driving away, and I think someone says, "No, he's found his home now, or at least he's better." And so then we get Buzz basically saying "to infinity" in the RV, and then we get Woody on the Ferris wheel / carousel saying "and beyond." That was touching. It didn't bring me to tears, but it was like, okay, like this isn't a bad ending. Like this wasn't. This made me, at least at this moment, feel like, okay, this wasn't a cash grab from Pixar trying to make another.
Well, it was, but
it was,
they
but
made it worth it.
It didn't feel. It didn't feel too much of a cash grab. It felt genuine in that regard of like, okay, they actually did something unique and interesting with Woody, and it wasn't. And he goes back to the kid. It's now, well, he wasn't satisfied with leaving Andy because he was still attached to Andy.
Yeah.
But he wasn't getting the care that he wanted from Bonnie, or that he deserved, I guess.
Well, he wasn't needed by Bonnie, and so...
He wasn't needed, even though in Toy Story 3 it's like, oh, Bonnie needs him because she wants the cowboy, and then it kind of became the more realistic, she found a better toy, or better thing to do. Anyways.
Tell me about this end credit scene.
Oh, so there's a lot of end credit scenes. I liked what they did. They do a lot of fun ones, but the one that is a real highlight that I suggest you watch as well is it's another one of these funny scenes where just like how Ducky and Bunny were saved from this little shooting gallery type of carnival game that this one dude zip-tied Buzz to. I guess we skipped that over. They're like, okay, let's get these toys to homes. Excuse me, sorry. Let's get these toys to homes, like these frogs that are stuck up there. I think he calls him Jeremiah at one point. Jeremiah the bullfrog. And they end up basically getting a whole line of kids, all these toys from the thing. And then it's like, well, what do we do now? And Ducky and Bunny come up with the idea of basically eliminating the shooting gallery attendant. And it's like the most nightmare fueled thing ever, but as an adult probably hilarious, is that toys, they start growing and shooting lasers at the guy and growing even more, and they just keep on growing into like kaiju level sized beings shooting lasers, laughing and shooting, and then it cuts back to Buzz just being like, or not Buzz, Woody just being like, huh? Nah, just come with us. And then it was Duke and Boom. Duke and Boom's like, wait, you guys can shoot lasers out of your eyes? And they're like, yeah. He's like,
yeah.
Cool.
Coming from the toy who couldn't do what he was advertised to do.
Yeah. There's a lot of other ones as well with like them back at Bonnie's or wherever, and we get to meet another Forky, and it's not a fork, it's a knife. Which of course she's like, trash.
Trash.
And we've got Forky having to realize, okay, now I'm having to explain to this person who I guess I've got a love interest in or whatever now. No, you're not trash. These aren't trash. These are friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Well, hey, I got about 60 seconds left of recording time.
So let's
any
wrap it
final
up then. No, I mean, good movie, but probably not the best Toy Story, but still glad I watched it. I hope they don't make a Toy Story 5. I think leaving it off on this note is probably a better thing to do. Probably leaving it at Toy Story 3 was probably a better idea, but what about you, Nick?
Toy Story 3 ending the whole trilogy would have been much better, but Toy Story 4 was still satisfying. And so I'm not mad that I spent time watching it, but at the same time, too many characters in one movie. Anywho, thanks so much for joining us in this very special episode of Tailosive Movie Reviews. Tune in next week for, maybe something else. If you haven't guessed what our strategy is, you know exactly what's coming up
next. But you
next.
won't know what happens in 2 weeks. That'll be for you either to decide or us to decide. So please, comment in the comments or leave us a review or anything else. Reach out to us on social media. And have a good morning/day/night.
Goodbye.